Our story begins with a man reborn as a river, now worshipped by a group of elves as the god of nature. He can summon celestial phenomena like spirit feathers and is protected by a mutated willow tree, all while using his waters to grow. By devouring powerful creatures, he gains purification, and under the nourishment of his summoned feathers, his volume has increased significantly. The surrounding spiritual energy has grown dense, turning what was once a desolate wasteland into a place finally teeming with life. Aside from that revitalized mutant willow, various beasts have appeared: wild wolves, bison, saber-toothed tigers, and mountain eagles. These beasts haven't reached the level of mutation yet, but in this world, they are far larger than anything from his previous life. They finally arrived. Seeing these creatures drawn by the spiritual energy, he felt a surge of excitement as water swords began to condense. With a sharp whistle, the swords tore through the air, instantly striking a bison that had just stepped to the shore for a drink. The creature collapsed without even a struggle, and a moment later, a small wave rose up from the river's surface. It swept the bison into the depths. A successful hunt. Purification increased by 1, and energy by 10. Not bad at all. Though they aren't mutant breeds, he realized that by hunting in bulk, he could raise his rank quite quickly. Water swords fired repeatedly with lightning speed, striking down the beasts. Some were startled by the sudden violence, of course. But because the spiritual energy was so alluring, even those who fled soon found themselves wandering back to the water's edge. In a way, this is just the cycle of nature. These beasts understand survival of the fittest better than anyone. The river's energy is simply too potent to resist, and they instinctively know this is their only chance to mutate, which benefits him greatly. One by one, the water swords flew, killing the beasts before the waves dragged them into the river to be consumed. As time passed, his purification and energy points steadily climbed, eventually reaching a perfect state of equilibrium with his skill consumption. But the real surprise came when he noticed the nearby willow tree had actually begun to understand his intentions. The willow branches danced through the air, beginning to hunt on his behalf. Another successful kill. Purification +1, energy +10. The notifications continued to chime as the hunt went on, steadily fueling his growth as the new god of nature. As time slowly drifted by, the day soon came to an end, and with it, the duration of his grace upon all things skill quietly expired as the skies cleared. The beasts that had been lured in by the spiritual rain finally reacted, scattering away from this murderous little river like a pack of startled rabbits. As for our river god, he was far too excited to care about their departure, focusing all his attention instead on his attribute panel, which now showed 3,523 evolution points. His energy value had reached 3,420 as well. It was a fantastic haul. Who knew that hunting ordinary beasts for a single day could yield so much profit? It seemed his grace upon all things skill was a guaranteed win, and he couldn't help but wonder how many points he'd earn if he managed to lure in actual magical beasts. Deep down, he felt a surge of anticipation. The next step was natural. Use the easy-to-understand attribute template to raise his rank and expand his riverbed. He wanted to increase his physical volume, and after a moment of thought, he decided to prioritize his rank. A crisp chime echoed in his mind. He consumed 100 evolution points to reach rank 2, then another 200 to reach rank 3. The notifications continued to ring out. He spent 400 points to hit rank 4, and then 800 more to reach rank 5. In an instant, his entire essence began to shift and expand. After clicking through 5 consecutive upgrades, the process finally came to a halt. To be honest, the sheer cost of leveling up was starting to make him grumble. He turned his gaze toward his new physical dimensions. At rank 1, he was only 100 meters long and 3 meters wide, but after 4 rapid upgrades, his length had grown. He now stretched across a distance of 500 meters, with a width reaching nearly 10 meters. His total volume had increased 5-fold, but that wasn't the biggest surprise. Upon reaching rank 5, he discovered he had unlocked a new skill, Torrential Impact Level 1, which allows him to condense the river's power into a crushing surge. It can strike 10 targets simultaneously within a 10-meter range at the cost of 11 energy points. A new skill born from a simple rank up, not a bad deal at all. Better yet, it was an area of effect attack, which solved his most pressing problem. With this new volume, even if it didn't rain, he felt much more secure. As long as he didn't encounter any terrifying mutated overlords, his daily consumption was negligible and could be sustained for a very long time. With that settled, he decided to use his remaining evolution points to upgrade his existing skills, and his eyes immediately landed on grace upon all things. The benefits of this skill were obvious. The falling spirit feathers attracted prey, while simultaneously providing a temporary boost to his own water volume. In his mind, it was the perfect combination of a recovery buff and a lure, making it an absolute priority for his next investment. Without a moment's hesitation, he clicked the upgrade button. A chime confirmed the success, 1,000 points consumed, and grace upon all things reached level 2. The system notification informed him that at this level, grace upon all things possessed significantly more spirituality, and the falling spirit feathers now had a much higher probability. It would surely attract nearby mutated species, but the cost was enough to make anyone wince. Level 2 cost 1,000 points, so level 3 would surely be even steeper. As it turns out, the further one progresses, the harder it is to level up. He couldn't help but grumble a little, though there was one silver lining to be found. After the upgrade, the spiritual essence within the grace upon all things skill had increased quite dramatically. After consuming another 900 evolution points, he glanced at his remaining balance and felt a wave of speechlessness. It was the classic tale of working hard all day, only to find himself right back where he started. He realized it was time to prepare for the next great downpour, and after a brief moment of preparation, he was ready. Once again, he entered his farming mode. A chime echoed as he activated level 2 of grace upon all things, consuming 5,000 energy per day for a sustained state. For 3 days, this would last. Suddenly, as the system notification rang in his mind, the space above the small river transformed just as it had before. A magnificent scene of steaming clouds and glowing mists appeared, and very soon, a heavy, torrential rain began to fall. The coverage area matched his physical body perfectly, 500 meters long and 10 meters wide. In just an instant, everything changed. The surrounding spiritual energy became incredibly dense. Nearby, the mutated willow tree began to shimmer with light, its tender green branches swaying in the wind. It waved toward him like an excited child, while its root system surged, spreading rapidly toward the riverbed. To his surprise, before the rain could even lure in any mutated beasts, it triggered a profound transformation within the mutated willow tree itself. In this moment, the tree that should have been withered and dead shed its pale decay and embraced a true rebirth, bathed in a vibrant green glow. Countless new buds sprouted continuously, replacing the yellowed branches and dancing through the air with newfound life. One could faintly sense the spiritual fluctuations from the new growth. At that same time, a system notification rang in his mind. His companion had changed. The mutated willow tree had successfully evolved, jumping from rank 4 to rank 5. It seemed the spiritual rain was even more effective than he had imagined. The willow had gained 2 ranks right at the start. He muttered to himself that rapidly building one's foundation was truly the only way to go. We see him growing more expectant of the harvest this rain would bring. Beneath the spectacle of the glowing clouds, the downpour continued. The heavy rain completely enveloped the river, and as time slowly passed, the water levels began to rise steadily due to the sheer volume of the storm. The entire river began to emit a faint, hazy glow, a spectacle that only occurs when spiritual energy reaches a certain concentration. Finally, after this torrential rain had fallen continuously for an hour, a massive tremor vibrated through the low-lying land. At that same moment, from the direction where the vibration originated, a giant tiger appeared within our sight. Right then and there, just as the flame tiger was lured by the river's spiritual energy and approached the bank, he finally launched his attack, instantly condensing his water swords. They manifested with lightning speed. At this moment, the power of the water swords was vastly different than it had been before. The force of the eruption actually broke the sound barrier, and a massive sonic boom echoed across the area as he struck again. Sensing the danger, the flame tiger let out a roar as flames began to flicker in its mouth, but it was already too late. Because the moment the sonic boom rang out, the water sword had already pierced through its head. After a dull thud, the flame tiger collapsed instantly onto the ground. Following his usual routine, he sent a surge of water waves forward, dragging the tiger's carcass directly into the river. He gained 100 evolution points and 1,000 energy, a truly generous amount of experience. It was 10 times more than before, and he felt a surge of pure joy. Naturally, once the first mutated beast appeared, others followed in succession, just like during the first spiritual rain, as more and more mutated creatures began to emerge. He alternated between his water sword and torrential impact skills with unimaginable efficiency, hunting down countless foes in a short time. Gale wolves and armored beasts were successfully hunted one after another. As time slowly passed, every beast that tried to approach the spiritual river was ruthlessly hunted down, causing his evolution points and energy to skyrocket. This hunt continued for 2 full days. By the final day, he vaguely sensed that something was different about his companion, the mutated willow tree. He could clearly see that at the very top of the willow tree, where its life force was most vibrant, a nest had appeared. Perched upon it was a massive mutated bird with an incredibly powerful aura. The creature stared down at the slaughter below, appearing almost intelligent as it sat there in deep thought. As for the willow tree being used as a base, it shimmered faintly but remained perfectly still. He understood why through their symbiotic connection the moment the nest was built. A warning signal flared in his mind. Intelligent life, a magic beast. This was the first thought that flashed through his consciousness. According to the information provided by the system, the evolution of these alien species followed a strict hierarchy: beast, ferocious beast, and magic beast. In these early stages of evolution, the first two rely almost entirely on instinct, whereas a magic beast begins to develop actual intelligence. As for the evolution beyond a magic beast, it reaches an entirely different level of existence, known as a calamity. Once they reach that rank, they become like a world boss or a lord, capable of ruling over an entire territory. At this moment, the bamboo eagle nesting in the willow tree clearly showed the early signs of such intelligence. After a moment of thought, he decided not to attack, choosing instead to observe. We see him begin to scan the data of this mutated bamboo eagle. It was listed as a ferocious beast at the peak of its rank, with formidable skills. Its air piercer skill was level 2, allowing it to reach twice the speed of sound instantly, a perfect tool for a surprise ambush. Its level 2 tier skill allowed its talons to pierce metal and stone. Combined with its speed, it could theoretically tear through the defenses of powerful magic beasts. This creature possessed an ancestral bloodline with immense potential and had already birthed a spark of wisdom. He was shocked it was only a ferocious beast. To have such intelligence at this stage was impressive. He realized that if he could recruit it like the willow tree, it would be a massive help later. While he muttered to himself, a small sense of anticipation began to grow. Meanwhile, as he watched the bamboo eagle, the bird was also quietly observing the small river where the spiritual rain continued to fall. Neither side moved as time slowly drifted by. The period of spiritual rejuvenation for all things was finally drawing to a close. Eventually, the thick clouds and the hazy atmosphere vanished. The weather cleared. Although the river still released spiritual energy, it no longer possessed that overwhelming, miraculous aura from before. Consequently, the number of mutated beasts drawn to the area dwindled until they were rarely seen. Only the mutated bamboo eagle remained, still perched regally atop the willow tree. After deciding to ignore the eagle for now, he finally began to tally his spoils from the hunt. He had amassed 70,000 evolution points and 880,000 energy. Seeing this harvest, he felt a surge of pure delight. Without a moment's hesitation, he began to level up. He consumed 1,600 points to reach rank 6, then another 25,600. To reach rank 10, the system congratulated him on completing his first stage of transformation, condensing his core and unlocking his natal talent. He was rewarded with level 1 life water. The system congratulated him on completing his first stage of transformation and condensing his primal source. He also gained the level 1 erosion skill. The moment he raised his rank to level 10, the small river underwent a sudden and dramatic transformation. The change was staggering. Its length doubled from 500 meters to a full kilometer, and its width expanded significantly as well. It even reached a width of 15 meters. Most surprisingly, a section of the river had actually transformed into a proper lake. He could clearly feel that this lake was now his true source. To his delight, it seemed to be connected directly to an underground spring. This connection was enough to offset his daily consumption, ensuring he could survive even a long drought. After feeling these physical changes, he finally turned his attention to his brand new natal talent and skills. The description for level 1 life water was quite poetic. It spoke of water nurturing all things. As a river, he could now mobilize the spiritual energy within him to condense this life water. This essence could help other species evolve. However, the system warned him he could only use it 3 times every 10 days. Frequent use would drain his spiritual reserves and weaken his nurturing power. Then there was level 1 erosion, a fundamental property of water. It allowed him to erode the earth and reshape the landscape. Any land he eroded would fall under his sight, bringing his entire flow under control. The system noted that his current level was too low to erode special landscapes containing high spiritual power. After reading this, he couldn't help but take a sharp breath. The effect of the life water sounded exactly like the legendary treasures described in ancient novels. It was the kind of thing that could boost a being's foundation. For his plan to tame the mutated bamboo eagle, its value was unimaginable. He looked toward the mutated willow tree. Since the eagle nesting there possessed intelligence, he knew he needed an extraordinary method to win it over. His plan was simple: use the life water as bait. Without wasting any time, he activated his natal talent for the first time. In an instant, the lake at the river's source began to glow with a brilliant blue light, as if all the surrounding spiritual energy was gathering. The energy surged toward the center of the lake. A vortex of dense spiritual mist formed, swirling and condensing rapidly. Finally, it solidified into a single, crystal-clear drop of water. The system chimed to confirm he had successfully condensed the life water. As the notification echoed in his mind, he used his symbiotic connection with the mutated willow tree to extend its roots into the center of the lake. With a series of thunderous rumbles, the earth began to shift as one of the mutated willow tree's roots reached the riverbank. The newly condensed life water drifted slowly across the ripples until it touched the root, merging into it like a single drop of dew. As the life water vanished into the root system, the mutated willow tree began to vibrate violently, triggering an immediate and powerful purification. The system chimed, announcing that his symbiotic partner was undergoing a fierce evolution after digesting the life water. Its rank began to climb. 6th rank, 7th, 8th, 9th, and finally 10th, all in a matter of moments. The power contained within that single drop was truly staggering. It pushed the willow tree from the 5th rank straight to the 10th, bringing it to the same level as the mutated bamboo eagle. Sensing a massive threat, the bamboo eagle suddenly abandoned its nest and took to the sky, though it didn't fly far away. Instead, it circled above, watching the scene below as if deep in thought. Our protagonist, of course, was watching its every move. Though the eagle hadn't reached the level of a magic beast yet, its intelligence gave it immense potential he simply couldn't ignore. So, even as the bird circled warily, he began to condense a second drop of life water to further his plan. He told himself that once the willow surpassed the eagle's evolution, the bird wouldn't be able to resist the temptation. Soon, the drop was ready. Just like before, the willow tree absorbed the essence, and the aura of its impending transformation finally exploded outward with full force. While evolution is like moving through small stages, a true transformation is a fundamental change in the very level of one's life. It is like a wild beast awakening into a ferocious beast, or a ferocious beast reaching the peak of the 10th rank. A second leap in life level allows a creature to become a magic beast and unlock true wisdom, and that was exactly what was happening. The life water possessed the exact power needed to facilitate this leap. In an instant, the process reached its climax. After absorbing that second drop, the aura of the 10th rank mutated willow tree finally reached its breaking point and erupted. Countless emerald shoots sprouted from the massive trunk, glowing with a terrifying green light that made it look like a divine ancient tree. It seemed to hold up a canopy of auspicious light. The system confirmed that the willow had begun its second great leap in life level. The earth shook as the thick, straight trunk began to grow at a frantic pace, reaching toward the heavens in a magnificent display. At the same time, the main root deep underground extended like a giant dragon, stretching directly toward the butterfly with immense power. He could sense the root reaching out to steady his butterfly, supporting it firmly during this critical moment of transformation. It was truly incredible to see it communicate so proactively. The birth of a magic beast-level life form is a sight to behold, after all. He couldn't resist checking the willow's updated information. Its race was now a willow demon, a first-rank magic beast with new skills. It possessed 100 mutated branches, a level 2 whip attack, level 1 entanglement, and a natural talent for level 1 regeneration. Having completed 2 life leaps, the mutated willow could now be called a demon, possessing great wisdom, combat power, and recovery speed. He wondered if beasts became magic beasts while plants became demons. Either way, the power radiating from it was undeniable. He muttered to himself, wondering if this new willow demon could somehow bring that mutated bamboo eagle down from the sky. Perhaps because of their symbiotic relationship. The moment that thought crossed his mind, the towering willow tree reacted. Suddenly, it erupted in a terrifying green light as hundreds of mutated branches lashed out into the air with a series of thunderous cracks. Each strike shot straight toward the heavens, looking as if they might pierce through the very sky itself. The struggle with the mutated bamboo eagle was over in an instant, leaving him genuinely shocked by the sheer efficiency of it all. He knew the willow demon would be strong, but he hadn't expected it to be quite this overwhelming. It had captured the eagle with effortless ease, and so, he moved to the next phase, condensing his final drop of life water. His talent had a 10-day cooldown and a limit of 3 drops, and overusing it risked his very essence, but he didn't care about that now. Everything would be worth it, because the eagle was already at the peak of the ferocious beast rank and only needed 1 drop to evolve. With 2 magic beast-level guardians protecting him, his own path to transformation would be significantly safer. Once the life water was ready, he used the ripples of the river to send it within 3 meters of the fallen eagle. However, he didn't let it reach the bird's beak just yet. Temptation, as they say, must be administered 1 step at a time. He had already laid the groundwork by evolving the willow, showing the eagle exactly what this miraculous water could do. His goal was to prove the power of the life water, yet he withheld it, much like teasing a child with a piece of candy. If it wanted the prize, it had to pay the price. He believed that despite its low intelligence, the bamboo eagle would understand. The choice was entirely up to the bird, and so a long stalemate began, even though the eagle was clearly desperate for the water. Its eyes still held a stubborn glint that annoyed him, and seeing that the eagle refused to submit, the willow tree lost its patience. A mutated branch lashed down immediately, the air whistling as a series of sharp cracks echoed through the clearing. In just a few moments, the eagle took dozens of hits, leaving it wounded and covered in blood, a brutal lesson in obedience. Its feathers were torn away in clumps by the willow's strikes, making it look like a giant, plucked chicken, hardly a majestic sight. Under the weight of this torture and the lure of the life water, the eagle's final spark of defiance finally flickered out. And in that very moment, a system notification chimed in his mind, congratulating him on gaining the mutated eagle's loyalty. Since there was no spiritual resonance, the system automatically designated it as a servant, allowing him to finally breathe a sigh of relief. With great anticipation, he checked the eagle's stats, a ferocious beast with 60% loyalty, currently awaiting its evolution. Its skills included level 2 sonic flight, allowing it to reach twice the speed of sound to ambush and kill its prey. It also had level 2 tier. Its claws could pierce stone and, at peak speed, could even shred the scales of powerful beasts. This creature possessed an ancient bloodline with immense potential and had already begun to develop a certain level of wisdom. He realized a servant wasn't quite the same as a symbiotic partner, as the former actually required a loyalty metric to manage. However, given his unique nature, he was confident that once the eagle was conquered, there was virtually no chance of betrayal. After all, even a simple spiritual rain is irresistible to beasts, let alone the concentrated essence of life water. While overusing this power could harm his main body, a single spiritual rain would be enough to restore him to full strength. Now that the mutated eagle had finally surrendered, he guided the last drop of life water directly to the bird's beak. The eagle let out another sharp cry, but unlike the previous screams of rage and resentment, this one sounded entirely different. We can easily tell that the bird was grateful. As the life water entered its beak, a transformation began, much like the willow's own evolution. Suddenly, a terrifying aura erupted from the battered, half-plucked eagle. In the world of ferocious beasts, this was a leap in life essence. The next stage was a magic beast-level life form, and we see feathers rapidly sprouting over the bare patches where it had just been whipped. As the new plumage covered its entire body, the feathers began to shimmer with a brilliant golden light, and its size started to increase drastically. It grew from its previous 3 meters to a staggering 10 meters in length. When it spread its wings, it was truly a sight to behold. It looked like a literal flying fortress, the sheer dominance of a magic beast. To be honest, those golden wings were incredibly imposing. He couldn't help but wonder if it might eventually evolve into the legendary golden-winged Great Pung described in ancient myths. Naturally, he felt a great sense of anticipation for the willow tree as well, sensing that it was every bit as formidable as this eagle. The transformation lasted for about half an hour, until finally, with a triumphant cry, the eagle took to the skies. It circled joyfully over the river, now identified as a golden-winged magic eagle with a loyalty rating of 100%. While loyalty below 50% risks betrayal, a perfect score of 100 means the creature is now incapable of turning against him. As a Tier 1 magic beast, its level 3 sonic flight now allowed it to instantly reach 3 times the speed of sound. This was perfect for ambushing prey, and its level 3 tier meant its claws could now pierce through solid metal and stone. At peak speed, it could even shred the scales of highly defensive magic beasts, all thanks to its new innate talent, Sky Shroud. This was a domain power that extended 1,000 times the bird's own size. Once activated, it would become the absolute ruler of the sky. The eagle gained a 10% boost to all stats, while any enemies caught within the domain suffered a 10% penalty to theirs. Seeing these stats, he felt a surge of excitement. The creature possessed an ancestral bloodline and had developed significant intelligence. The eagle was simply too powerful. If it continued to grow, it would eventually dominate the entire sky, especially with that Sky Shroud ability. Imagine the scale. With the eagle currently at 10 meters, the domain could cover a range of 10,000 meters once activated. And this was only at the first tier of its magic beast life form. One can only imagine what it will become as it reaches higher levels. If its physical body continues to grow, this domain will truly become invincible. And since its innate talent can also be upgraded, the potential is limitless. All things considered, the Magic Eagle's talent has become a powerful trump card. Meanwhile, just as the Golden Magic Eagle finished its transformation, a flash of light enveloped it, and it shrank down into a small eagle less than a meter tall before flying back to rest upon the willow tree. Next, right before his surprised eyes, the creature actually began to build a nest, a busy little architect working amidst the rustling leaves. We see a gentle breeze blowing as the small river flows past the towering willow tree at the water's source and high above. An empty nest stands out prominently. As for why the nest remains empty, the reason is quite simple. The Golden Magic Eagle is often away. Every day it leaves for a short while, and whenever it returns, its talons are clutching some form of prey. However, without exception, it drops this prey directly into the river to be converted into evolution points and energy. But today, there is a slight exception to the routine. The prey the Golden Magic Eagle has brought back is neither a beast nor a monster, but a woman. Yes, a woman with stunning beauty and a graceful figure. Her large ears, however, distinguish her from a normal human. Just like usual, the eagle drops her dying form into the river. He was instantly stunned. Was she human, an elf, or something else? A massive question mark immediately appeared in his mind. This time, he didn't turn the visitor into evolution points and energy as he usually did, but instead used a gentle wave to push the unconscious woman to the shore. Next, he activated his inspection skill on her, Isabel of the elf race, rank 3 extraordinary. Her potential was quite intriguing. She possessed a 60% affinity for wood elements and 20% for dark elements, with skills like level 1 thorny vines. She also had level 1 Night Mother. It seems these nature-loving elves viewed her awakening of dark power as an ill omen. Isabel and her entire bloodline had been abandoned and exiled by the elven royal family. Seeing this information, he was quite surprised. It was just as he suspected. The woman was an elf, but he hadn't expected her to be an outcast simply for wielding the power of darkness. This was certainly unexpected. Extraordinary beings are on the same level as magic beasts, with the sole difference being their high intelligence. He couldn't help but think how wonderful it would be to communicate with her, though as a river, he was more of an anomaly than any ordinary object. Because water is formless, he lacked a true physical shape, and although he possessed great wisdom, he could only interact through his companions. Aside from simple mental exchanges with his companions, he was completely unable to communicate with any other intelligent life, so upon meeting this elf, his first thought was naturally how to bridge that gap. He realized he had only undergone his first life leap so far. If he reached a second life leap and became a being like a magic beast, perhaps everything would change, a thought that suddenly struck him. A life leap, as the name implies, is the process of elevating one's very essence, much like a wild beast evolving into a sentient magic beast. It grants the ability to think and even engage in basic mental communication. Though he was an anomaly, he had possessed wisdom from the very start. Therefore, it was possible that after a second leap, he might gain the ability to communicate with all things. Just thinking about it, he couldn't help but feel a surge of anticipation. Next, we see him open his status panel. Host Sumo, semi-living being, Demon Willow. Servant, Golden Magic Eagle, 100% loyalty. Current state, 1,000-meter river with an established source. Current rank, Tier 1. The season is right, and evolution conditions are met. Innate talent, Water of Life, Level 1. Skills, Nurturer of all things, Level 2. Evolution conditions met for Water Sword Level 2 and Light Erosion Level 1. Everything was ready for the next step. Evolution points, 100,000. Energy value, 120,000. A system prompt appeared. Sumo is no longer a rootless river. Having established a source, he now possessed immense growth potential. For the next life leap, he could choose a transformation path, the River of Elements. He could also choose the River of Death or the River of Life. All conditions for these transformations had been successfully met. To his surprise, his next evolution offered 3 distinct directions. At this moment, we find him deep in thought. After reviewing his attributes, Sumo began to weigh his options. The River of Elements was fairly self-explanatory. The river water would evolve to hold elemental powers. Based on the information he had gathered, this world possessed metal, wood, water, fire, and earth, along with special elements like light, dark, wind, and thunder. If he chose this path, his future evolution would undoubtedly require a massive amount of elemental resources. As for the River of Death, it was equally easy to understand. It focused on the power of demise, where slaughter and bloodshed would fuel the river. However, it wasn't his first choice for now. While the River of Life seemed decent, it looked a bit too much like a support role. Without raw power, being a healer might be risky. The value of a River of Life would change drastically in the eyes of the powerful, and after much thought, Sumo finally had his answer. He chose the River of Elements, as only this path offered immense power in a very short time, which, to be honest, was his priority. Since taming the Golden Magic Eagle, the benefits this creature brought him were simply enormous, as it went out to hunt on a regular schedule. It would then drop its prey into the river, allowing Sumo to accumulate a staggering 100,000 evolution points, giving him the capital he needed. With great anticipation, he finally began his transformation. We hear the system confirm that the conditions for his second life leap have been met. Currently in the state for a second life leap, he was presented with 3 choices: the River of Elements, the River of Death, or the River of Life. As the system prompts echoed in his mind, a sudden doubt occurred to him. If he chose Elements now, would he lose the chance to ever evolve into the Rivers of Death or Life? He tried, for the first time, to communicate with the system. He had assumed his cheat code was just a static game template that wouldn't respond, but to his surprise, he actually received an answer. After he threw the question out into the void of his mind, a response actually echoed back. Listen closely. A voice as light as a gentle rain spoke to him as his small river began its first true life leap. In that moment, the 1,000-meter river erupted in light, looking like a winding dragon as an unimaginable aura began to spread, especially from its source. A terrifying phenomenon appeared at the source, with the water boiling and mist rising, filling the lake at the head of the river with spiritual energy. The entire river began to expand and swell, from 1,000 meters to 2, then 5, finally stopping at a distance of 10,000 meters. The lake at the source expanded to 500 meters across, making it large enough to be called a true lake. A significant upgrade, indeed. As the transformation deepened, Sumo's very essence became richer. The River of Elements, as the name implies, naturally contains all elements, acting like a universal vessel. Imagine, if you will, that he was previously just an ordinary river. Back then, he could only hold water and perhaps mingle slightly with earth or wood, but now, everything was different. Having evolved into the River of Elements, he can encompass all things. As long as he absorbs other elements, the river can manifest them. For instance, if he absorbs a fire element gold mine or an underground fire vein, the river of elements can transform into a river of fire. Wherever he flows, he could burn everything. Likewise, by consuming a fine gold mine, he could become a river of pure metal. It is much like heavy water, where a single drop carries the weight of an army and can even be used to forge legendary weapons. As for rivers of lightning or earth, they are just as formidable. In short, the river of elements contains every foundational attribute. For now, aside from his own pure water element, Sumo hasn't touched other elements yet. So, after this particular transformation, the entire river became saturated with an unimaginable water-based spiritual energy. As the process accelerated, it finally reached its peak. Suddenly, the system's voice echoed in his mind. Listen, he had successfully evolved into the river of elements, activating a virtual water godhead. In an instant, his spirit shook with the weight of those words, causing the entire river to surge with violent, crashing waves. He could hardly believe a virtual godhead had formed so easily. Meanwhile, memories of this world from the time of his rebirth resurfaced. In this world, gods and demons are real, and 10,000 races vie for spiritual power. Even in such a competitive place, some beings complete a fierce evolution, leaping step by step toward divinity. A godhead, you see, is the true mark of a god. As for a virtual godhead, it is naturally the final stage before a being truly ascends, the moment where the illusory becomes real. Once the word virtual is stripped away, he will possess a true water godhead. In this world, those with a virtual godhead carry a very specific title, quasi-gods. By simply evolving into the river of elements, Sumo had already reached this divine threshold. This was something he hadn't dared to imagine. It was the scent of divinity itself. A virtual godhead is equal to a quasi-god. After calming his racing heart, he couldn't help but marvel at his luck. He had once thought being a river was a tragic fate. To be honest, he now realized this was the ultimate cheat code. Who else could become a god in a single step? As the surface of the water rippled, his virtual water godhead fully solidified, and a divine mental energy began to spread. This energy permeated every drop of the river. In that moment, he felt an unimaginable change as his divinity began to take shape. A ball of light appeared on the water's surface. Through a process of mental manifestation, it began to take whatever form he desired. One moment, it was a willow tree planted in the water, glowing blue. The next, it mimicked the golden magic eagle in a sapphire hue. Everything he sensed in his vicinity was being transformed by this divine mental energy, until finally, he turned his attention to the unconscious elf lying on the shore. Soon, a figure glowing with blue light emerged from the river's surface, though it wasn't a female. He had modeled this male form after her specific traits. He couldn't help but wonder if this was the true power of a god. It felt utterly profound. At that very moment, while he was exploring these new divine mental powers, the elf on the shore began to stir, her eyebrows twitching as she slowly opened her eyes. In that instant, she witnessed a scene she would never forget. To her, it was a deity. As Isabel watched the shifting forms upon the water, her face was a mask of pure, stunned disbelief. She recognized the divine power immediately. Back in her tribe, whenever the high priestess held a grand ceremony, the tree of life, an incarnation of the god of nature, would radiate this exact same aura of divine energy. Every elf eligible for the ritual would bathe in that aura to purify their own wood elemental power and accelerate their evolution. Although the scene before her was quite different from a tribal ritual, the divine aura itself was unmistakable. However, there was a significant difference between these two powers. One was the wood-based divinity of nature, while this was a pure, concentrated water-based divine power. In that moment, Isabel's heart pounded violently against her ribs. She was certain of it. She was looking at a god. It wasn't her god of nature, but this presence felt even more immediate than what she had known in her tribe. Meanwhile, the moment Isabel woke up and saw the display, Sumo sensed her consciousness returning. A second later, the elven form he had manifested dissolved instantly, and his divine mental energy began to drift slowly toward her. As his mental energy brushed against her, the system's voice chimed in his mind. Listen, he had made contact with an intelligent being. The virtual water godhead was now fully active. Suddenly, a template for his godhood appeared in his mind. Virtual godhead, water element. It listed his believers, his divine water power, and a new divine skill, blessing level 1. To be honest, it was quite the upgrade. He now possessed the potential to become a true god. The more believers he gathered, the more powerful his divine water energy would become. Intelligent beings with pure hearts could become his believers, or even fanatics, providing him with a source of untainted power. The information from the virtual godhead was easy to grasp, and combined with what he knew of this world, Sumo understood its purpose. This so-called pure power was essentially the power of faith, the very thing that the gods and demons of this world fought over. The birth of this virtual godhead had certainly given him a massive shortcut, which, naturally, was the best possible outcome. It involved the primal abilities of a deity. Normally, an intelligent being would have to break through the 10 realms of heaven's prison just to sense the power of faith, yet his virtual godhead had shattered that restriction entirely. It was simply unimaginable. And that wasn't even the most vital part. Since he had evolved into a river of elements, he wasn't limited to just water. Fire, wood, metal, earth, and even rare elements could gradually be born within him. In other words, we see a path to total mastery. The river of elements could develop every single attribute. Being a god of a single element was by no means his limit. Deep down, he couldn't help but feel a surge of anticipation. Meanwhile, as his divine mental energy made contact with Isabel, and the virtual godhead activated, Isabel felt her soul tremble. She began to think of her own lineage and their painful history. Her people had been exiled from the elven forest for being impure. It was said that the gods would never touch the tainted. And yet, she wondered why her supposedly impure heart was still able to behold a true deity. Within his mind, the virtual godhead pulsed. It was as if he could overhear her inner monologue, sensing Isabel's every doubt. At that same moment, he watched as a cluster of incredibly pure energy began to condense above Isabel's head as she prayed. The moment this pure energy appeared, the virtual godhead throbbed with a primal hunger, as if it were desperate to consume it. It sent him a clear signal to absorb this power. He wondered if Isabel truly intended to offer him her faith. Considering the situation, it was the only logical conclusion. After a moment of thought, he attempted to absorb this pure light. He channeled his divine mental energy, guiding her pure spiritual power toward the specific category of fanatic. In an instant, the virtual godhead shifted, and Isabel's name appeared clearly on the list. He had gained his first true believer. Within this system, there are levels of purity, and those who earn a deity's absolute trust are known as fanatics, receiving divine favor. Meanwhile, our elf, Isabel, offered up her most devout prayer, yet she found herself gripped by an extreme tension. After all, gods are usually high and mighty, utterly unapproachable beings, and she saw herself as nothing more than an elf with impure faith, abandoned by her kin and exiled by the elven queen. She felt it was almost impossible to receive divine favor. Her prayer was merely a desperate, final hope. To be honest, it was a long shot. In this world, no deity would normally look twice at someone with tainted faith, and Isabel possessed a 20% affinity for the dark element. Because her own people viewed her as impure, Isabel watched the river with a racing heart, waiting for any sign from the deity within. But at that very moment, she felt a strange, mystical connection, sensing an overwhelming affinity with the god of the river. This caused Isabel's soul to tremble. She realized these were water elements, and she had somehow developed a natural bond with them. She wondered if the deity had truly heard her plea, and her heart began to beat wildly. As an elf, she was born to worship the god of nature. She was born with an innate wood affinity, but her dark affinity had branded her as one with impure faith. This meant, quite simply, that the god of nature had abandoned her. Yet here she was, an outcast, suddenly receiving the grace of a water deity. It was simply unimaginable. She had always been told that gods only favor those with pure hearts, so why was she, with her wood and dark affinities, being chosen by a god of water? She began to wonder if everything she had been taught was a lie. In that moment, as the thought flashed through her mind, she knelt toward the river in a surge of emotion, prostrating herself completely upon the ground. Her devotion reached its peak, and her face took on a truly sacred expression. And we must admit, regaining the favor of a deity was a profound and holy event for Isabel. From this moment forward, she swore a silent oath that her body and soul belonged entirely to this god. This, in essence, is the conviction of a fanatic. As the virtual godhead absorbed her pure spiritual energy, it began to exert a subtle, mystical influence over Isabel's very soul. It transformed her into a true, unwavering believer. Now, having received Isabel's absolute and fervent faith, the status of the virtual godhead finally shifted. Level 1 was achieved. He had gained his first water element fanatic. Isabel is now a believer, providing spiritual water power. We see the system unlock a new divine skill, Blessing Level 1. With this virtual godhead, he now possesses the potential to become a true deity. The more believers he gathers, the stronger his water power grows. Any intelligent being with a pure heart can become a believer or a fanatic, providing him with pure energy, or so the system tells us. A fanatic provides 1,000 points of divine power over time, while a standard believer provides 100. It is quite a lucrative arrangement. This new power feels incredible. After sensing the divine energy for a moment, he realizes the entire river seems to have come to life. As long as he is within the water, his strength increases tenfold. Imagine, for instance, a simple water sword skill. Once amplified by divine power, its attack strength is 10 times greater than before, though naturally, these skills still consume his divine reserves. Therefore, the more believers he has, the more massive his power support becomes. These are his foundations, but there is more to it than that. Divine power can also be used to grant blessings, a fundamental ability of any god. And so, with a single thought, he turns toward Isabel. He activates his blessing skill. Suddenly, a curtain of water-based light condenses on the river's surface, shining directly upon the young elf. In an instant, she is completely enveloped. A sacred aura manifests as the light surrounds Isabel, causing her body to tremble slightly. An expression of pure disbelief washes over her face. In this moment, she faintly hears a voice coming from the deity himself. The Lord of Elements accepts her devout faith and grants his blessing. It sounds like a whisper directly into her ear. In reality, this is merely a voice appearing within Isabel's soul. Much like his symbiotic relationship with the demon Willow, their communication is unique. It is often just a mental message, yet the recipient understands the full meaning instantly. This is exactly what Isabel experiences during the blessing. After all, gods are lofty beings of a different level of existence. They don't exactly engage in casual conversation with lower life forms. As the blessing takes hold, Isabel's face flushes red. She senses the water elements dancing around her, making her feel like a cherished pet. A massive amount of water energy pours into her body. This is a miracle, a true, undeniable miracle performed by a god. To allow an elf with zero water affinity to feel the power of the tides is simply unimaginable. To be honest, only a god could do this. At this very moment, as the water energy floods her system, Isabel begins a process of profound spiritual purification. Her rank begins to climb ferociously, jumping through the 4th and 5th stages of the extraordinary realm like a sponge soaking up water energy. In just a few short moments, she surges all the way to the 8th stage. A single blessing, and she is already at rank 8. Her water affinity is pushed to a perfect 100%, an achievement that is, quite frankly, utterly inconceivable. As Isabel completes this purification and gazes at the river, her heart is filled with a devotion far deeper than before. We see the system confirm the results. His new fanatic is now providing him with 1,000 points of divine water power. As the river of elements, he truly possesses the potential of an all-encompassing god, and he begins to look forward to what comes next. Through his connection with Isabel, he learns they are located at the northernmost edge of the burning plains, near the elven forest. True to its name, this vast region is incredibly barren, a wasteland often referred to as the land of exile, home mostly to fierce beasts. Very few intelligent tribes choose to settle in the burning plains, but we learn that Isabel's particular group is a tragic exception. She was once the saintess of her tribe, but because she possessed a dark affinity, her heart was no longer considered pure. The other elves viewed her as tainted. Consequently, her entire tribe was cast out by the elven king himself. They were exiled to the burning plains to fend for themselves, under the pretext that the god of nature does not favor the impure. And so, Isabel and her people were left to wither away in this desolate place, struggling to survive as they migrated across the wastes. The moment they entered the plains, the tribe was targeted by the fine-winged magic eagle, a creature that had recently evolved. With its newfound intelligence, the beast immediately locked onto Isabel and snatched her away with lightning speed. After processing this information, he feels a surge of anticipation. A tribe of 500 elves is a significant opportunity. Even if they don't all become fanatics, having them as regular believers would provide a steady stream of divine power every day. After a moment of thought, he uses his mental strength to command the magic eagle, which flies down from its nest in the demon willow. The beast lands submissively before Isabel. Seeing this, her heart begins to race once more as she senses a new command. In that moment, she intuitively understands the deity's will. She is to go back and bring her entire tribe to this place. Isabel is filled with gratitude for the deity's favor, vowing to herself that she will bring her people to this sacred place no matter what. She nods respectfully toward the river's surface. Then, she turns her gaze toward the fine-winged magic eagle, a spark of excitement in her eyes. To her, this is a divine pet, a creature belonging to a god. As a humble servant, she never imagined she would have the chance to actually ride it. The very idea of returning home on the back of a divine beast is almost too much to process. And so, with a racing heart, she finally climbs up. She settles onto the back of the magic eagle. A moment later, with a powerful surge, the creature spreads its massive wings and takes flight. It bursts through the canopy and soars toward the heavens. While it may not be a legendary rock, its presence is no less commanding as it climbs. It lacks the power to reach the highest heavens, but since its evolution into a magic beast, its flight speed has reached 3 times the speed of sound. Consequently, it doesn't take long to reach the spot where Isabel was first snatched. Down below, however, a brutal slaughter is unfolding on the wasteland. We see Isabel's tribe being hunted by a massive pack of gale wolves. Despite having 500 people, the elves are locked in a desperate struggle. But having left the elven forest and the god of nature's embrace, his wood energy was recharging far too slowly, which was unfortunate, considering the massive pack of gale wolves before him. They are barely holding on, casting thorny vines and wooden barriers, but their skills are failing against the sheer number of predators. Under the relentless assault of the wolves' wind blades, their defenses crumble. As time slips away, the casualties among the elves continue to mount. The air is filled with the sounds of battle and the cries of the fallen. Watching his people die, the elven patriarch begins to lose all hope. Exiled, abandoned, and left to fend for themselves, only to be devoured by beasts. It is a grim end for a once proud people. He can already see the final fate of his tribe. But right at that moment, a sudden, violent gale explodes from the sky above. A massive shadow suddenly looms over the battlefield. Simultaneously, the unmistakable, terrifying aura of a magic beast descends upon them all. A sharp, piercing cry shatters the air. High above the clouds, the magic eagle finally reveals its full, overwhelming presence. In an instant, the Gale Wolves, who were so fierce just moments ago, begin to tremble in pure, unadulterated terror. This is the natural pressure exerted by a higher life form. As a magic beast with true intelligence, its aura is far beyond that of a common monster. The effect is instantaneous. Not only are the wolves paralyzed with fear, but the elves themselves look up with faces full of despair, fearing the end has come. The sight of this fine-winged magic eagle is all too familiar, as it was the very creature that snatched away their elven saintess not long ago. Seeing it return, its purpose seems painfully obvious. The patriarch cries out, wondering why the great god of nature has abandoned his faithful believers. A look of grief and indignation washes over the elven patriarch's face. Down on the ground, they were already struggling against a massive pack of gale wolves. They were barely clinging to life as it was, and now the undisputed overlord of the skies has appeared, a magic beast that offers them no mercy. It seems there is no path left for survival. In this moment of absolute despair, the patriarch finally makes a grim decision to detonate his own power. He intends to trade his life for a sliver of hope for his people. Suddenly, the wood elements within his body begin to boil with a violent, transcendent energy. While his self-destruction might not harm a magic beast of the eagle's caliber, it would certainly be enough to tear a hole through the wolf blockade below. As the wood elements grow more active, a terrifying green light erupts from the patriarch. His people scream for him to stop, begging him not to throw his life away. They cry out that the god of nature will surely see their suffering and send a miracle to save them. A hopeful thought, if a bit optimistic given the circumstances. Sensing their leader's absolute resolve, every elf present begins to wail. He simply tells them that the tribe must live on, especially the children. The patriarch shakes his head, his eyes filled with a final, paternal love. This is his last hope. However, it is at this exact moment that everything changes. The fine-winged magic eagle circling above suddenly dives. Moving at 3 times the speed of sound, it sweeps across the battlefield like a bolt of golden lightning. Its passage is so sharp it could pierce solid stone. In an instant, the gale wolves are torn apart, reduced to nothing more than a bloody mist. The sound of air being shredded echoes repeatedly. Yet, despite the absolute carnage dealt to the wolves, not a single elf is touched by the attack. The process is incredibly swift. In the blink of an eye, the predators that had surrounded the elves are wiped out. Their remains scattered across the wasteland. The air grows thick with the heavy scent of blood. As the dust begins to settle, the elves finally have a moment to process what just happened. They stand there, frozen in utter shock. Even the patriarch, who was seconds away from detonating his very soul, stares on in complete disbelief. A massive question mark seems to hang over the minds of every survivor. To be honest, none of them can quite fathom why they are still breathing. Once the magic eagle has finished crushing the gale wolves with its overwhelming power, the elves finally look up and see a figure on the creature's back. It is Isabel. She stands tall upon the eagle's spine, looking for all the world as if she is bathed in a divine, holy light. At the same time, we see her lips moving in a soft murmur, releasing a gentle power that feels almost like a sacred prayer. Water's spiritual energy begins to condense, gathering from all directions to envelop every single wounded elf on the ground below. She has unleashed a level 1 healing art, a skill she mastered only after being blessed by the power of a true deity. By harnessing the element of water, she can achieve a mass healing effect. It might be gentle, but its reach is impressively vast. In just a few moments, it feels as though the elves are being washed clean by a revitalizing rain, soothing their weary bodies. One by one, they begin to recover as their wounds close. Sensing this pure water energy, the realization finally starts to dawn on them. It is their saintess. Isabel has returned, and the elves can hardly contain their joy at seeing her alive and well. They wonder if she actually tamed the magic beast, and where this strange water healing power came from. Naturally, the questions are endless. To be honest, it makes little sense to them. They saw her snatched away by a monster, a situation where survival is usually impossible. Yet here she is, not only surviving, but returning with the fine-winged magic eagle acting as her personal mount. It is a sight beyond their wildest imagination. Seeing this, the patriarch finally lets the volatile energy of his self-destruction dissipate. He looks up at Isabel, noting her new water powers, and wonders what she endured to lose the favor of the god of nature. The patriarch sighs, feeling that they have truly lost their divine protection. You see, the elves are quite different from other races. From birth, they possess a natural affinity for the wood element, a gift they believe was bestowed upon them by their god. The god of nature demands absolute purity. Any elf who awakens a different elemental power is seen as tainted or impure. Because Isabel possessed dark energy, she was destined for exile, and her entire tribe suffered the consequences of her impurity. In this world where gods and demons watch from the shadows, the elves are far from being a dominant power. They are just a small remnant. As a result, they are bound to the whims of a single deity. Other races, however, operate under very different rules. The humans and orcs are the true masters of this world, spread across the globe in countless empires and vast kingdoms. There is the Holoa kingdom of the fire god, the Ayun empire of the earth god, and the orc empire that worships pure strength. In the grand scheme of things, the elves are merely a minority race. Long ago, they became devoted followers of the god of nature. At this moment, as the patriarch's voice fades, Isabel, still standing atop the fine-winged magic eagle, finally begins to respond. She asks her uncle if he truly believes their tribe has any hope of returning to the god of nature's embrace after being exiled. This isn't the first time such a thing has happened, and we know the fate of those other banished tribes. So, she tells him, stop hoping. Isabel's voice rings out clearly, declaring that they can only rely on themselves, and on that new power, the God of Elements. And so, the title of God of Elements is heard for the very first time in this world. The patriarch is horrified, asking if she sold her soul. He demands to know if she has pledged her faith to another deity, his expression shifting instantly to one of pure shock. Isabel confirms it. Everything she is, her body, her heart, and even her soul, now belongs to the God of Elements. That is why she returned. Her goal is simple. Since the god of nature abandoned them and the elven king exiled them, why shouldn't they choose a new path? As the saintess, her status is second only to the patriarch, so her words carry a weight that no one can ignore. The moment she speaks, every elf present draws a sharp breath of cold air. To change the faith they were born with is simply unthinkable. In their traditional way of thinking, gods do not favor the impure. To change one's faith is to become a heretic, a dangerous label, indeed. Under normal circumstances, even those who abandon their original faith are rarely blessed by another deity. The idea that Isabel's new god would actually favor a heretic is a massive revelation that leaves them all reeling. The patriarch takes a deep breath, his voice trembling slightly as he asks if this god truly looks upon her with favor. He asks again if this deity truly doesn't mind her past devotion to the god of nature. Isabel answers that the god of elements loves all beings. She points out that even a magic beast has become a divine pet, so anything is possible. Since they were cast aside, why stay loyal? If the god of elements is willing to protect them, she argues, then why shouldn't they believe? Her words hang heavy in the air. The patriarch falls into a deep silence, lost in thought as the minutes slowly tick by. It is a long, tense wait for everyone involved. Finally, he sighs, admitting he is getting old. He tells Isabel that as the saintess, if she sees a way for the tribe to survive, he will listen. Then go ahead and do what must be done, the patriarch says, handing over the tribe's future. From this day on, Isabel is their queen. A mark of tribal inheritance glows on the patriarch's forehead before flying toward Isabel's. And so, the transition of power begins. Now the queen of her people, Isabel prepares to lead them all toward your location, but the old patriarch stops her for a moment. He tells her that since they are impure in their faith, they would feel guilty receiving a god's favor without offering something in return. He reveals a secret map of the blazing plains, marking the location of a flame gold mine, hoping she will present it to her new deity. It is a gesture to ease their troubled hearts. The old man pulls out the map and hands it to Isabel with a trembling hand. We see that this entire scene unfolds right before your eyes. As a deity, you can observe your followers' every move through the virtual divinity. Through your master-servant bond with the golden magic eagle, you sense everything. Naturally, your interest is piqued when that map appears. Deep down, you feel a surge of excitement. A flame gold mine is exactly what you need to fully unlock your fire-type virtual divinity. With this resource, your true form could freely manipulate both the river of fire and the pure river. And so, time begins to slip by. Under the protection of the magic eagle, it takes Isabel and her tribe 3 full days to finally reach the shores of your lake. The moment the elves lay eyes on this river, so full of spiritual energy, they collectively gasp in disbelief. And who could blame them? Even in the vast elven forest, they had never encountered a place so saturated with pure energy. Here, led by Isabel, the journey ends. The small group of 400 surviving elves slowly approaches the riverbank. Then, without a word, Isabel is the first to kneel. She prostrates herself completely, her graceful form pressed to the earth in a display of total, heartfelt devotion to you. It is a total surrender of body and soul, offered up as though she were yours to do with as you please. In fact, this was her intent. This is the limit of what Isabel feels she can offer. Since she considers herself impure for changing her faith, she seeks only your mercy. To be favored by a god despite her past is, in her mind, the greatest luck possible. Seeing their queen kneel, the others follow suit. Behind her, every single elf, including the old patriarch, mirrors her actions. It is a truly magnificent and solemn sight to behold. One by one, the elves show their absolute sincerity, following Isabel's example as they begin their very first prayer to the god of elements. As if performing an ancient ritual, the elves pray for divine favor, hoping to become true believers. At that very moment, Accompanied by the collective prayers of the elves, your water-type virtual divinity begins to shimmer with a brilliant light. Just as when you absorbed Isabel's pure faith before, we see hundreds of clusters of pure, radiant light begin to manifest. This power rises from the elves, a strength that only believers with pure hearts and total devotion can produce. Clearly, every single one of these elves kneeling in prayer is exceptionally pure. And then, the moment finally arrives. Without a moment's hesitation, you choose to absorb this power of faith, officially accepting these elves as your own followers. System notifications chime as your power grows. With 400 elves, you have gained a total of 4 units of divine water power. Your status now shows 1 fanatic, Isabel, and 400 believers, bringing your total water divine power to 4.2 units. With your blessing and divine domain skills at level 1, the overview confirms you now possess the potential to become a true god. The more followers you gain, the stronger your water power becomes. Any intelligent being with a pure heart can become your servant. A fanatic can provide up to 1,000 points of divine power over time, a staggering amount, to be perfectly honest. It is now clear that divine power is the essential resource for leveling up your godhood. If things continue at this rate, you wonder if you might quickly elevate this virtual divinity to a state of perfection, perhaps even surpassing the rank of quasi-god. The prospect of reaching the rank of a lower god of water is enough to make anyone feel a surge of anticipation. In truth, while a quasi-god has the basic abilities of a deity, they cannot yet be compared to the true gods of the world. Only by transforming the virtual into the tangible, turning that virtual divinity into a true godhead, can one be called a deity. Gods are ranked from lower to middle, then upper, and finally the supreme deities. The stronger the god, the larger their domain. The most powerful can even transcend dimensional barriers to spread their faith to other worlds entirely. And right now, as your virtual divinity levels up, you have finally discovered the path of evolution and why gods are so desperate to spread their faith. This path is even more potent given your unique form as the river of elements, and perhaps, one day, the river of death or life. As long as he continues to evolve, even the rank of a supreme deity will be within reach for the river of elements. We see that among this new batch of elves, their affinity for the water element has reached 30, 50, and even 70%. A 70% affinity is truly remarkable, as it means they are drawing closer to the divine, much like his fanatic, Isabel. She possesses a perfect 100% affinity, and in an instant, the faces of these elves are filled with pure excitement. They prostrate themselves on the ground, their hearts becoming even purer. The bond between a god and a believer is a mysterious thing. The stronger the god becomes, the greater the believer's potential grows, yet a follower can never surpass the one they worship. Such is the natural law of this world. Now, having gathered hundreds of followers, he suddenly experiences a strange new sensation. It is as if he has become the heavenly Tao itself, where every living soul that believes in him is held firmly within his grasp. However, the Yahello, who shares a symbiotic bond with him, is different, possessing a vast and unrestricted potential for advancement. Think of it like a magical treasure that a master can cultivate without limit, whereas a servant requires loyalty to remain bound. To be honest, he is certain that as long as he keeps evolving, he will eventually maintain absolute control over everything. Sensing the sincere devotion of the elves, he decides to act, suddenly activating his blessing of all things skill. At the same time, the divine sacrifice talisman is unleashed, enveloping the group of elves in a sudden, shimmering hum. Above the 10,000-meter-long river, a breathtaking vision of glowing clouds and misty light begins to manifest before our eyes. Rainwater saturated with spiritual energy begins to fall, causing the entire river to pulse with a terrifying amount of power. The elves cry out that the deity has heard their prayers and sent a divine sacrifice, offering their very souls in eternal service. They beg for his favor, and those kneeling on the ground are overcome with emotion as their faith in him explodes from within. Just as when he blessed Isabel, clusters of pure faith begin to manifest once more, and his plan, it seems, is working perfectly. He is delighted by this second harvest, which allows him to gather another 4 units of water divine power as the spiritual rain falls. His blessing follows immediately after, and the elves reach a state of total euphoria as they feel his divine power wash over them. Their affinity for the water element rises once more, and as if receiving a direct divine transmission, their levels begin to surge. A single spiritual rain and a divine blessing have caused over 400 elves to evolve simultaneously, a truly unimaginable sight. Anyone witnessing this would be utterly stunned. Meanwhile, as the elves' auras grow heavier, he notices another divine skill beginning to glow. The divine totem skill has activated on its own. He pauses for a moment, quickly shifting his full attention toward this new power. At level 1, the divine totem covers a range of 10,000 meters, a passive divine skill that acts as a protective shroud. When a believer's purity reaches a certain level, a totem manifests spontaneously, creating a direct link to his virtual godhead. As these followers pray day and night, the totem shortens the time needed to accumulate divine power within its vast range. Furthermore, it increases the follower's strength by 10%. It is, quite frankly, an incredible passive ability for such a distance. He realizes this is essentially like having his own domain, and naturally, the discovery fills him with a sense of great joy. As the divine totem glows, an indescribable statue begins to materialize on the riverbank where the elves are currently kneeling. Its form is difficult to define, as it is shaped by the collective faith and the image of the deity held within the believers' hearts. The elves cry out in wonder at the totem, laughing with joy because they are no longer a forgotten, abandoned race. They marvel at the perfection of the divine image, and one by one, the elves begin to offer up their heartfelt praises. They bow before the totem in sincere prayer, while the blessing of all things continues to flow for 3 full days and nights. Though this was a gift for the elves, the scattered spiritual energy inevitably attracts countless fierce beasts and wild creatures to the area. As time passes, these predators begin to close in, but at that moment, the golden-winged magic eagle soars into the sky. It begins a systematic slaughter of the encroaching beasts as a divine pet. This is simply his duty to his master. Nearby, the Yahello waves its glowing, mutated branches, hunting down the beasts and dropping their carcasses into the river one by one. 1, 2, then 3. As the hours slowly tick by, the number of hunted beasts continues to grow steadily. This display of power deeply moves the elves, and led by Isabel, they quickly realize it is time for them to act as well. The elves begin to mimic the divine pets, hunting down the fierce beasts. It is so effortless, it almost feels like cheating. His evolution points and energy values begin to soar rapidly, and with the elves joining the fray, the vast 10,000-meter river is now fully protected by his followers and divine pets. In this way, 3 days pass by in the blink of an eye. His evolution points have surged to 300,000, while his energy value has broken through 500. To be honest, it is staggering. Since his life tier ascended to the level of a 10,000-meter elemental river, his volume has not only exploded, but the spiritual rain and energy he bestows have also significantly improved. It is precisely because of this that the hunt yielded such a massive harvest. At this moment, as the spiritual rain finally subsides, his attention turns toward his attribute panel. This is his foundation, after all. Whether it is the transformation into a multi-elemental deity or the evolution of the rivers of death and life, everything relies on these stats. Between his unique cheat system and his special core form, we see the current status of our host, Sumo, and his companion, the Yahello. His servant, the golden-winged magic eagle, remains at 100% loyalty, a perfect guardian, as one might expect. With these elements and his virtual godhead, he now possesses the potential to become a true god. The more followers he gains, the more powerful his water-based divine energy becomes. Any intelligent life with a pure heart can become his follower or even a fanatic. The system informs him that a fanatic provides 1,000 divine power over time, while a standard follower provides 100. His attribute panel is, quite frankly, looking incredibly luxurious. After reviewing it, he can't help but take a sharp breath of surprise. He whispers to himself about his current state, his voice barely a murmur. Next, he begins to contemplate how to effectively utilize his existing resources to grow even stronger. Activating the rivers of death and life is currently out of the question, as the conditions for that transformation haven't been met yet. As for other elemental breaths, he lacks the resources to activate them. Naturally, those paths are closed for now. The only way to grow is to purify his own river and upgrade his skills and innate talents. At the top of that list is his innate talent, the water of life. This is his most powerful weapon for nurturing his subordinates. After all, it was only 2 drops of this water of life that allowed the Yao Willow to leap from a fierce beast to a demonic Yao. The same logic applies to the golden-winged magic eagle. These 2 are essentially his left and right hands. If he uses the water of life to push them further, the benefits would be immense. Since his rebirth, Sumo has gained a solid understanding of this world's power hierarchy. Taking a single species as an example, a beast is like an ordinary human, a life form that hasn't yet begun to evolve. Beyond that, fierce beasts, demonic beasts, and calamities represent the path of evolution, equivalent to the awakening, transcendent, and heavenly desire stages of intelligent life. Anything higher begins to touch the realm of the gods, since his own main body strength cannot leap forward in the short term. Raising the Yao Willow and the magic eagle to the level of quasi-gods is a perfectly viable alternative. After all, one is his divine pet, and the other is his life companion. After some careful thought, he finally begins to upgrade the level of his innate talent, the water of life. With a chime from the system, 10,000 evolution points are consumed, and the water of life reaches level 2. It makes sense, of course. The higher the level of this water, the more terrifying its effects become. It is practically a legendary treasure. The system isn't about to let him reach the maximum level easily. He realizes he'll need to increase his hunting frequency, whispering this to himself. We see the status of the Water of Life at level 3. The description reads, water nurtures all things and blesses all living beings. As a river, he can mobilize the spiritual energy within his waters to condense this liquid, aiding species in their evolution toward the calamity and heavenly desire stages. The system notifications continue to chime. Next, he turns his focus toward the skill known as Blessing of All Things. This skill is his true foundation for standing tall in this world. To be honest, it is the core of his entire strategy. At level 1, this skill could attract ordinary beasts. At level 2, it could draw in fierce beasts. Following that logic, levels 3, 4, and 5 should attract demonic beasts, calamities, and eventually, those at the quasi-god level. The higher the level of the monsters he hunts, the more evolution points and energy he gains. It is much like grinding in a dungeon. Once you reach a certain level, there is no point in returning to low-level areas. Naturally, the level of his prey must increase as well. After weighing his options, he pours the remaining 200,000 evolution points entirely into the Blessing of All Things skill. 10,000 points are consumed, and the skill successfully reaches level 3. Immediately after, another 100,000 points are spent. The Blessing of All Things successfully upgrades to level 4. We hear the system chime. 90,000 evolution points remain, which is not enough for the next level. Since he cannot upgrade the skill further, he accepts that the costs grow steeper at higher levels. Still, level 4 should be more than sufficient for now. The spiritual feathers he drops can now attract calamity rank beings, a temptation they will find hard to resist. This fits perfectly with his original plan for the Yahello. He intends to raise both the Willow and the Magic Eagle to the Calamity level first. This way, they can handle the coming monsters. Finally, everything is ready. Sumo quickly activates his innate talent. The spiritual energy of his entire river begins to condense into the very first drop of the Water of Life. In an instant, a terrifying amount of spiritual energy is released from within it. It feels as if the water has truly gained a life of its own. Next, he communicates mentally with the Yahello. The tree seems to read his heart perfectly. Its main root, which is anchored deep underground and supports the lake bed, begins to rise rapidly toward the surface. Finally, it surges up from the center of the lake. Water splashes everywhere. Under Sumo's guidance, the Yahellow's main root instantly absorbs the drop of water that seems to possess its own soul. In just a moment, the massive Yahello nearby erupts with a terrifying aura. Its thick, straight trunk begins to grow at a frantic pace. 1,000 meters, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000 meters. In a short time, the Yahellow's form blots out the sun, releasing a frightening green glow. From a distance, it looks as if everything it covers has become the willow tree's personal domain. And that isn't even the most important part. During this transformation, the mutated willow branches actually split into countless tiny twigs. They are like fine threads, dense and crisscrossing in every direction. It looks as if a green mist has risen, not only concealing the area, but even shrouding Sumo's entire 10,000-meter-long river. This is the Mist of the Yao, a skill where endless willow threads condense. In its attack state, it can manifest mutated branches capable of piercing through metal and stone. Seeing that a single drop of the Water of Life could cause the Yahello to evolve into such a form, Sumo feels a surge of excitement. Through their companion bond, he knows that the Yahello hasn't even reached the Calamity rank yet. If it takes one more step, the results will be unimaginable. And so, with great anticipation, he begins to condense a second drop of the Water of Life. We hear the sound of rushing water. At the same time, just as he sends the signal for the Yahello to absorb the water once more, the tree begins to sway its branches in response. In a surprisingly human gesture, the tree actually refuses the gift. We see Sumo sense a faint, blurry consciousness struggling to communicate with him. The message is fragmented. Master, Calamity, Life, needs its own ancestry. Using too many external things will harm the bloodline inheritance. The Yahello wants to break through on its own. That is the message it conveys, and despite the stuttering mental connection, it expresses itself with great effort. Finally, he understands what the tree is trying to say. While the Water of Life can grant a quick breakthrough, doing so comes with a hidden cost. It might cause the tree to lose the unique bloodline abilities it would otherwise gain after reaching its ancestry. This surprises him, but after a moment, he understands. As we often see in stories, the truly powerful don't rely on shortcuts or medicine to reach the top. They possess a peerless, untapped potential. They trust in their own strength to evolve through every trial. The Yahello, it seems, belongs to this rare class of elite beings. At this moment, though the Yahello refuses to absorb the water, its next move leaves Sumo stunned. He watches as the drop of Water of Life is gently wrapped in a willow branch and lifted high above the lake. Suddenly, the green mist formed by the branches begins to churn violently. Under the influence of dense wood element energy, the drop of water begins to slowly dissolve. To be honest, the entire process is mesmerizing. It is a perfect fusion of decomposition and integration. The water transforms into terrifying spiritual energy, merging with the Yahellow's wood elements. Right then, A system notification rings out in his mind. Wood element crystal detected. Wood-type virtual divinity state is now ready for activation. When that beautiful sound echoes, Sumo is completely shaken. It takes several long breaths before he can even regain his composure. He never expected his wood-type virtual divinity to be activated through his companion, the Yao Willow. It is a stroke of incredible luck, really. After the initial shock wears off, he realizes why this is happening. A willow tree is the very root of the wood element, but its level was simply too low before. Previously, it lacked the strength to release its own wood element crystal. But now, after absorbing that first drop of the water of life, it has drawn infinitely close to becoming a calamity rank life form. It still cannot actively separate its own crystal, but Sumo has the water of life. By combining the two, the effect is no different from a crystal condensed by a true calamity rank Yao Willow, which, naturally, changes everything. The water of life can be called the source of all things. It doesn't just aid in evolution, it can also purify the essence of any element it touches. This is exactly why the Yao Willow, having reached its current state, thought of this clever way to repay Sumo's kindness. After all, as your life-bound companion, the Yao Willow sensed that your river could embrace all the elements of heaven and earth. In other words, it realized you could condense the divinity of every divine system. To be honest, no bond is deeper than the one you share now. Then, a hum echoed. At that exact moment, Sumo didn't hesitate. He used the wood element crystal to activate his wood-type virtual divinity immediately. A thunderous roar erupted. In an instant, the once calm surface of the river began to boil violently, as if it were being heated by an invisible fire. Terrifying spiritual energy soared into the sky. Under the radiant light, the 10,000-meter river took the shape of a divine dragon, its ripples shimmering like scales. It was a scene of pure, sacred majesty. Amidst this overwhelming display of power, Sumo felt his very essence undergoing a world-shaking transformation at the source. The lake began to expand at a frantic pace. In just a few short moments, it grew 10 times larger, while the river's length and width followed suit. Even the depth underwent a terrifying metamorphosis. The length stretched from 20,000 meters to 30,000, and then surged to 50,000. The moment the wood-type virtual divinity was activated, the river's volume expanded wildly. We hear the constant, deafening roar of the water claiming new ground. The entire river eventually stretched to a staggering distance of 100,000 meters. Clearly, his wood-type divinity had fully solidified. Once the transformation was complete, the waters within this vast 100,000-meter expanse were saturated with power. It was a perfect blend of water and wood energy. In a single breath, the Yao Willow, which lives in symbiosis with the river, received a new wave of nourishment. It was a gift it couldn't refuse. Being the root of the forest, it was naturally drawn to wood energy, and as a plant, it craved the water. So, the timing was perfect. The true beneficiary of this evolution was still the Yao Willow. Under the dual influence of these elemental powers, it seemed to break through its final shackles. Finally, it began its third life leap. Through a series of incredible coincidences, the Yao Willow found itself with a rare opportunity. It now had the chance to strike at the threshold of a calamity rank life form. Countless streams of energy converged as an endless green mist gathered. The mist completely enveloped the Yao Willow's massive trunk. From a distance, it looked like a radiant pillar supporting the sky, standing firm beside the lake. Meanwhile, the elves watching the river's expansion and the willow's transformation fell to their knees before the divine pond. To them, this was undeniable. They had just witnessed a miracle. The river had grown to an impossible size in the blink of an eye, as if the world itself were being reshaped. They couldn't imagine anyone but a god possessing such power. And yet, this wasn't even the most critical part of Sumo's activation. The moment that virtual divinity activated, the elves, who had always worshipped the god of nature and possessed an affinity for wood energy, sensed something within the river. They felt a sudden surge of wood element spiritual power. Not only that, but anywhere near the river, this wood energy had become incredibly dense and abundant. To be honest, this was simply unimaginable to them, as their understanding dictated that a deity could never possess two different elemental powers at once. Yet, the deity they worshipped had done it. A single great river now held both water and wood divinity, and the elves living beside it shared those same affinities. We could say this place had become a true paradise for the elves, much like a legendary land of ultimate spiritual cultivation. At this very moment, as the Yao Willow's transformation deepened, the form of its third life leap finally began to manifest its true appearance. It was a tree that pierced the heavens. Its main root had turned into a dragon. Its trunk supported the sky, and endless willow branches shimmered with green light. It illuminated the entire land. Even more shocking was that the previously contained green mist began to spread at that exact second, expanding in every direction. Its coverage grew from an initial 10,000 meters to a distance of 100,000, perfectly matching the scale of its symbiotic partner. However large Sumo's river became, the Yao Willow could cover that same area. The two were bound together, the willow acting like a precious treasure in his hands. It was almost like an extension of his own power. Now, with 10,000 weeping branches and a sky full of green mist, every inch was filled with wood energy. The spiritual power of the water element surged as well, as if the vitality of all things had been awakened. From afar, it looked like a true immortal realm. It no longer resembled the barren, desolate lands typical of the burning plains. We must admit, after this dual evolution, the landscape had been utterly reborn. To the observers, it proved their god was omnipotent and supreme. Imagine the scene, a wasteland transformed into a divine sanctuary before your very eyes. The deity truly favored all living beings. When the elves witnessed this world-shaping transformation, their devotion reached a fever pitch. Their faith became purer than ever. Surprisingly, several of them even produced a third wave of spiritual essence through their intense prayers. This pure power was offered up by Isabel, the old elven patriarch, and several other promising elves. And that wasn't all. These few elves, much like the fanatic Isabel, each generated a staggering 1,000 units of pure faith power. Suemo sensed this immediately. He was quite surprised, as 1,000 units is the typical output of a fanatic believer. Without a moment's hesitation, he accepted their offerings. He converted all that faith into divine power. Just like that, his divine power finally broke through the 90,000 mark. And what came next was even better. On the interface of the virtual divinity, the list of fanatic believers began to shift, adding the old elven patriarch and those other pure-hearted elves. They had all ascended to the rank of fanatics. It seems we have finally learned how believers level up. It is those with the purest faith. The purer the devotion, the higher the chance of becoming a fanatic and gaining greater rewards. This gave Suemo a much clearer understanding of the process. However, his attention soon shifted back to his two virtual divinities. He noticed that after activating the wood element divinity, something had changed. The divine power converted from his followers' pure faith was no longer just water element power, but a unified form of divine energy. Surprisingly, his wood element virtual divinity hadn't leveled up yet, unlike the water element one. We should remember that previously, once it hit the 40,000 peak, the water divinity automatically reached level 2. It seems that having an extra element has its costs. The difficulty of advancing had increased significantly. Suemo wondered just how much divine power he would need to accumulate to succeed this time. He felt it might be necessary to follow the path of other gods, gathering believers relentlessly, even if it meant controlling an entire massive race. Finally, the transformation of the Green Leaf Immortal Sect concluded. The Yahello had successfully evolved into a calamity-grade life form. Next, our attention turns to Suemo's divine pet, the golden-winged magic eagle. It seemed to sense the gaze of its deity falling upon it. The eagle's body trembled before it let out an excited cry. After all, it had witnessed every moment of the Yahellow's magnificent evolution. Being quite intelligent, it knew its master would surely treat everyone fairly. So, the moment it felt that divine gaze, it became instantly energized. Its cries echoed continuously, ringing throughout the entire expanse of the Green Leaf Immortal Sect. Seeing the eagle's eager display, Suemo couldn't help but feel amused. He decided that, just this once, he would grant its wish. He hoped the surprise this creature brought him would be no less than the Yahellow's. Using the same method, he condensed the water of life once more. The golden-winged magic eagle had shown intelligence even at the ferocious beast level. Such potential was certainly worth the investment. Besides, he was confident he could keep the creature under control. As the water of life was sent before it, the eagle let out another sharp cry. Suemo sensed a wave of gratitude. Since neither could speak, this mysterious master-servant bond served as their only bridge of communication. And so, as the eagle swallowed the water of life, it felt as though it had consumed the most precious treasure in the world. Its aura began to surge wildly as it spread its wings, transforming into a golden streak that shot toward the sky, because the heavens, after all, were its true domain. Naturally, this transformation needed to take place in the clouds. At this moment, as the golden-winged magic eagle's power continued to soar, its body seemed to become a sun, blindingly bright, casting a radiance that almost completely enveloped the river below. It stood in perfect harmony with the Green Leaf Immortal Sect formed by the Yahello, making the entire region look like a true paradise filled with auspicious light. As time slowly passed, the sun formed by the golden-winged magic eagle grew even more brilliant, its wings shimmering in layers. With the eagle at the center, spiritual energy from all directions swirled inward to form a massive vortex, which was quite a shocking sight for Suemo. He could vaguely sense that this spiritual energy contained the gold element. The eagle was a gold attribute creature, just as the Yahello was wood attribute, something he had known from the start. Initially, he thought the eagle's level was a step below the willow's, and that this transformation wouldn't be enough to condense the gold element. But the creature did not disappoint him. Through the restructuring of its bloodline, it gradually grasped the ability to control the power of gold. The golden light intensified until finally, a cry pierced the sky as the golden-winged magic eagle fully unfurled its wings. While still technically a magic beast life form, its body had reached a staggering length of 1,000 meters. Though not as massive as the Yahello, it was still an incredible size. It was almost hard to imagine, especially considering the eagle had only reached the peak of the magic beast rank and hadn't yet evolved into a calamity-grade life form. Seeing this, Su-Mo couldn't resist condensing another drop of the water of life, but just as he suspected, the golden-winged magic eagle refused it. This wasn't entirely surprising, really. Any being with immense potential knows better than to rely too heavily on external items for their growth. While using such treasures for minor breakthroughs is fine, much like steady cultivation, a fundamental leap in life rank is a different matter entirely. Relying on medicine for such a leap would waste its potential, especially since the eagle's restructured bloodline contained precious inherited memories. If it used a shortcut to evolve, it might lose those ancient legacies. It communicated to its master that it wanted to achieve this breakthrough on its own. The eagle expressed its thoughts in fragments. However, unlike the Yahello, it lacked the innate ability to condense the pure essence of the gold element. After all, the two are different species. The Yahello could use its branches and greenery to decompose and fuse with the water of life. But the eagle, despite having potential equal to the willow, simply couldn't do that. It was a matter of specialized natural roles, one might say. The golden-winged magic eagle was built for raw combat power, while the Yahellow's strengths lay more in support. Eventually, the display came to an end. Su-Mo withdrew the water of life with a hint of regret, shifting his attention toward the elven queen, Isabel. She was his first fanatical servant and the leader of her tribe. Though a divine believer, her potential didn't quite match the willow or the eagle. Still, helping her advance would bring great benefits, as he was counting on her to recruit even more believers to his cause. After a moment of thought, he sent the drop of water of life hovering over Isabel's head. Then, with a low hum, the magic began. Kneeling on the ground, Isabel felt a surge of divine energy. She realized this was a gift from her god and offered her deepest thanks. She sensed Su-Mo's presence in the void and was overcome with joy. To her, this was the ultimate sign of favor. Her devotion deepened even further as, guided by Su-Mo's power, the drop of water of life finally began its work. It slowly merged into Isabel's body. In an instant, her aura began to surge wildly as the powers of water and wood collided. These two spiritual energies circulated through her, allowing her to shatter the limits of the extraordinary rank in a heartbeat. At this moment, Isabel completed her third life leap, evolving directly from the extraordinary rank to the heaven prison rank. Her strength had exploded. After the transformation, she immediately bowed toward the totem to thank the deity for his grace. She was now bathed in a holy radiance. Meanwhile, the other elves watching this scene couldn't help but feel a surge of envy. Their queen had become the being closest to their god, a divine servant in every sense of the word. It was a strange turn of fate, especially since she had previously awakened a different power, the element of darkness. Among the elven races, such a thing was naturally seen as a sign of a fallen elf. Because of this, she and her tribe had been cast out. They were exiled, which, to be honest, wasn't an isolated case in their history. Evolution often looks like heresy to those who don't understand it. And yet, here we see the truth. Isabel's people saw her as a servant of the divine, even with her unique nature. Her followers looked upon her as the bridge to their god, the one who served his will above all others. She was a divine servant who wielded the power of darkness, a combination that would have been unthinkable to her former kin. She and her entire tribe were cast out and exiled. Of course, this wasn't an isolated case, as history has a way of repeating itself. In every generation, during the struggle for the elven throne, tribes are inevitably driven away for reasons exactly like Isabel's. They awakened elements they shouldn't have. Fortunately, Isabel gained Su-Mo's recognition and changed her faith. This was her great opportunity. It was a turning point for her tribe as well. Now, having become the being closest to a god, she felt a divine guidance stirring within. She felt the need to spread the faith so her deity could have more believers. What the god desires, the servant naturally senses. Although Su-Mo hadn't issued an explicit command, the thought suddenly took root in Isabel's heart at that very moment. After finishing her prayers, she rose and looked toward the other elves, realizing that her god required the expansion of his faith. As his most devoted followers, she told them they had to spread his word. She then turned to the old patriarch with a new purpose. She ordered him to lead the people to find other abandoned elven tribes and bring them back into the god's embrace. And we must admit, after stepping into the heaven prison rank, Isabel had changed. She now carried the undeniable authority of a true elven queen. As her voice fell, the old patriarch immediately responded, promising to tell the deity that they would fulfill her command. He knelt and vowed to spread the faith until the god's light covered the entire land. It was a heavy promise, to be sure. In the time that followed, the elves became quite busy. Elves, as it turns out, have a unique way of sensing one another's presence. As long as they are within a certain distance, they can feel their kin. The old patriarch knew where the exiled tribes usually went. The Burning Plains was the primary destination, while the Dark Swamp was reserved only for those considered truly depraved. So, Under Isabel's direction, the tribe set their sights on the other elves who had been cast out into the burning plains. And just like that, as the elves departed, this lush material realm became quiet once more, with the Yao Willow and the Eagle Nitian watching over it. The greenery flourished and the small rivers flowed. Everywhere one looked, the spiritual energy was thick and vibrant. It was a true paradise, a world away from the harsh environment of the burning plains. Everything was peaceful and beautiful. However, the most surprising thing to Sumo was that after the tribe left to spread the faith, Isabel, as their queen, remained. Aside from her daily prayers to the divine totem, her favorite activity was bathing, and yes, she did so right inside Sumo's body. In Isabel's eyes, this river was a sacred stream, the very place where her deity was born. As a divine servant, she sought total purity. She believed her body, heart, and soul should belong entirely to her god. Thus, bathing in the waters that birthed him became a ritual. Washing away all impurities was her daily duty, as she felt this was the only way to become truly pure and closer to the divine. This was also a tradition of the elven race. Back in the Great Forest, they possessed a similar spring of nature. It was a gift from the god of nature, and the elven queen would bathe there every day to cleanse herself for her deity. She offered her pure soul to nature, so her actions here weren't strange, but they certainly caused Sumo quite a bit of distress. You see, this river was his actual body. The flowing water acted as his senses, meaning he felt everything that entered the stream. And most importantly, before his rebirth, he had been a man with perfectly normal thoughts. So the queen's bathing habits, well, they were a bit embarrassing for him, to say the least. Still, for a river, this was merely a small interlude in a much larger story. Despite the awkwardness, it was nothing compared to the goal of evolution, so Sumo focused his full attention on his own growth. Currently, the companion tree Yao Willow had become a calamity rank life form, more than capable of guarding this entire realm. Meanwhile, the Eagle Nitian had reached the 10th rank of magical beasts. Though his third evolution wasn't complete, it was very close. With the elven tribe out spreading the faith, Sumo found himself extremely satisfied with how everything was proceeding. Next, it was time to fill the gaps in the elemental river. He already possessed the virtual godheads for both water and wood. The metal element would surely activate once Nitian reached the calamity rank, leaving only fire and earth to be found. These 5 basic elements are the very source of the elemental river and must be activated first. As for the fire element, there was already a lead. Some time ago, the old patriarch had presented him with a secret map of the region. This map recorded the location of a flame gold mine in the burning plains. As we know, such elemental mines almost always produce elemental gold. To activate the fire godhead, he had to claim that mine. And so, at this very moment, as Sumo scanned the secret map, it appeared in his mind like a virtual game interface, showing that the distance didn't seem too far at all. He decided he could let the Eagle Nitian scout the area first, and soon, a plan formed. A beam of light erupted from the river's surface, shining directly onto Nitian as he rested upon the Yao Willow. In the next moment, Sumo transmitted his will through their spiritual connection, with a sharp, piercing cry that echoed through the air. Nitian understood the command instantly, transforming into a streak of golden light as he soared into the sky. Half a day later, we see the eagle arriving above a canyon that appeared to be engulfed in eternal, roaring flames. He expected to easily scout the flame gold mine, but as soon as he appeared, his aura as a high-ranking magical beast seemed to disturb an unknown entity below. Suddenly, a massive pillar of fire erupted, shooting toward the heavens. It looked as if it would pierce the sky itself, and hidden within the flames was a massive head, shaped like a serpent, but adorned with dragon-like horns, a truly terrifying sight. Sumo, of course, witnessed this through his divine vision. His mind raced as 2 words flashed through his thoughts: calamity rank. Yes, this flame-shrouded beast was a genuine calamity rank life form, and it was clear that this flame gold mine was its personal territory. Sensing the immediate threat, Nitian let out a defiant scream, spreading his wings and accelerating to 5 times the speed of sound. He narrowly dodged the strike. Sumo immediately sent a warning. "Come back, you are no match for a calamity rank being." But to his surprise, he didn't feel fear from Nitian. He felt a surge of pure, unbridled excitement. It was as if this monster was the exact catalyst Nitian needed to break through. Was he really planning to evolve mid-battle? Deep down, Sumo felt a sense of dread. After all, his eagle was likely outmatched by such a formidable foe. He felt a mix of anticipation and hesitation. A magical beast and a calamity life form exist on entirely different levels. Even a creature with the potential of a heavenly dragon would face the risk of death in such a cross-realm battle. Nitian was his own creation, and losing him now would be a devastating blow. Because of this, Sumo hesitated, torn between caution and potential. Of course, if he truly wanted to, he could simply command Nitian to retreat instantly. After all, as the master, he held absolute authority over his servant. Yet, while he was still weighing his options, the Yao Willow nearby began to vibrate. To be more precise, its main root, buried deep underground, let out a dragon-like roar. The sound shook the very earth. In that moment, sensing the tremors, Suemo received a clear message from the Yao Willow. It could actually extend its main route all the way to the flame gold mine where Nitian was. He was pleasantly surprised by such an ability. If he were in human form, he might have even praised the tree aloud. On second thought, however, he felt a sense of relief. Wasn't this simply the natural instinct of a plant? Its root system could spread and occupy the underground like a massive web. Given the Yao Willow's current calamity rank size, its roots were like dragons, making it easy to carve out space beneath the surface. Upon learning of this capability, a bold idea suddenly took root in Sumo's mind. He would let the tree expand his domain underground. He imagined his waters flowing through the earth as a hidden network beneath the burning plains. It was, to be honest, an incredibly ambitious plan. The burning plains were vast and seemingly endless. Creating a subterranean river that wouldn't run dry was a staggering challenge. With his current volume, it would be difficult to achieve. Although he had evolved from rootless water into a river with a source, his water supply wasn't quite enough to sustain a massive underground network. But for the current situation, it would suffice. He decided to risk it. He would try it first. At worst, he could just summon a few more rainstorms to make up for the lost volume. With a single thought, the Yao Willow understood his will as if receiving a divine revelation. The massive roots erupted with terrifying power. The main root dove deep into the earth, carving out a tunnel with draconic strength. At the same time, once the underground space was cleared, the river water surged into the new passage as if a dam had been breached. As the waves crashed into the depths, Sumo's own volume began to decrease rapidly. Meanwhile, to prevent the ground from collapsing, he activated his erosion skill. Everywhere the water touched, it felt as though an ancient underground river had existed for eons, gaining a mysterious structural support. The combination of erosion and the willow's roots was perfect. This expansion ability was truly perfect, though the speed at which his accumulated energy was being consumed was, to be honest, staggering. If he hadn't farmed so many monsters during those previous rainstorms, he wouldn't have dared to spend it like this. Even so, it wasn't enough. He couldn't yet complete a river for the entire burning plains. As time slowly passed, the Yao Willow's main root continued to carve through the depths. The water volume of Sumo's 100,000-meter elemental river had already decreased by a full fifth. Meanwhile, during this same period, the golden-winged magic eagle, Nitian, clashed repeatedly with the creature at the mine. It was an elemental life form born from the flame gold itself. Perhaps a snake-type beast had died there, leading to a strange rebirth where the fire element successfully merged with the creature's lingering spirit. This resulted in a unique elemental being that was not only exceptionally powerful, but had also achieved its third life evolution thanks to the gold ore. It had become a calamity rank existence. To be perfectly honest, if Nitian tried to face this thing head-on, he wouldn't stand a chance at survival. Fortunately, Nitian was a lord of the sky with extreme speed. Yet, even with that advantage, the eagle's golden wings were suffering. They looked as if they had been ignited by the enemy, and the flames were nearly impossible to extinguish. After fighting for a long time, Nitian finally began to falter, his aura dropping to rock bottom. Using the last of his strength, he soared upward into the sky. He desperately wanted to escape this flame demon snake, but because they were so close to the mine, the air was thick with a heavy heat. A power similar to a flame domain made it difficult for Nitian to break free. Finally, after taking a direct hit from the enemy's fire, he plummeted straight from the sky, letting out a cry of grief and indignation. Sensing his end, the eagle sent a final thought to Suemo. But at that exact moment, the earth suddenly began to vibrate violently, as if a massive earthquake were tearing through the plains. Terrifying waves of power surged from deep underground. In just a single instant, the entire canyon where the flame gold mine sat seemed to sink several meters into the ground. This sudden upheaval shattered the constraints of the flame domain, and Nitian felt a sudden shift. At the same time, a mental message from Suemo appeared in his mind, acting like a divine revelation to guide his way. Nitian realized immediately that his master, his great deity, had arrived. He let out a sharp, piercing cry that echoed across the land. Freed from the domain's shackles, the eagle charged back into the sky, his body glowing with golden light and lingering flames as we watch from afar. He looked like a rising sun, reminiscent of the mythical sun golden crow from the world before his rebirth, though we shouldn't confuse the two. Meanwhile, flames swept across the surroundings as the creature tried to drag Nitian back into its grasp. But right at that moment, the creature's spirit jolted as a sudden sense of crisis surged through its heart. Even as a calamity rank elemental, it felt something shifting. The very fabric of the space around it seemed to be stretching and pulling, as if the world itself were being torn open. It was as if a hidden dimension were being forced into reality, dragging the creature into a confrontation it hadn't prepared for. The air grew heavy with the weight of this new presence, a force that seemed to carve out its own territory within the canyon. Every fiber of the elementals being screamed that the environment was no longer under its absolute control. This sudden spatial distortion was a clear warning that a power equal to its own had finally entered the fray. As a calamity-rank life form with immense potential, it possessed instincts for survival that allowed it to sense approaching disaster. It was a fundamental law of survival, really. Sensing the danger, the flame demon snake immediately withdrew its sprawling flames. It condensed the fire into a crimson spiritual garment around its body, and for the first time, we see its true form revealed. A demon snake nearly 1,000 meters long appeared, covered in flaming scales. On its head, just as we suspected, it had grown something resembling dragon horns. They were deep red and radiated a terrifying heat. Now, sensing the impending threat, the snake turned its fiery pupils toward the ground. Suddenly, the earth began to fracture with a series of deafening roars. A massive, thick root pierced through the surface, carving out a crater nearly 100 meters wide. The Yahello had arrived. Its main root looked like a dragon. As it emerged, a calamity-rank aura flooded the area, its hard surface covered in intricate patterns. These patterns looked remarkably like dragon scales. In an instant, the two calamity-rank existences locked onto one another, their auras clashing. By a strange coincidence, the Yahellow's root resembled a wood dragon, while the flame demon snake bore the likeness of a fire dragon. Infuriated by the invasion of its territory, the snake didn't care if its opponent was of equal rank. This was its home, after all. It launched the first strike, its flaming horns glowing brightly as it swept toward the Yahellow's root. And it must be said, the battle was only beginning. In this world, the principles of elemental balance still hold sway, and we must remember that the Yahello belongs to the wood element. After all, its current state is quite unique. By relying on the underground river it carved out to get here, it brings water close to fire. Even if it managed to suppress the enemy, the cost would be far too high. To be honest, carving out this hidden river was exhausting. Most of its accumulated energy had already been spent, making a stealthy approach the only logical choice to activate the fire element. With the power of a virtual godhead, it could easily subdue this flame demon snake. It seems this plan began back when it saw the snake through the golden eagle. After witnessing the creature's power, the goal was set. This snake is, after all, a special elemental life form with immense potential. Its growth potential is no less than the golden eagle's, making it a worthy subordinate. Once the transformation into a river of flame is complete, this creature could guard an entire region on its behalf. Right now, though the Yahellow's main root is struggling against the flame demon snake, it remains unharmed for the moment, supported by water and with spiritual energy. Meanwhile, using the underground river as a springboard, the erosion skill slowly seeped into the rock layers, creeping toward the flame gold mine. And then, the system detected the target. The fire element gold could finally be absorbed to activate the fire virtual godhead. As time slowly ticked away, the moment finally arrived. Once the erosion reached a certain depth, a notification suddenly echoed in its mind. A small opening was worn away near the flame gold mine. A stream of water, clear as a mountain spring, instantly surged into the gap. Then came a sharp, persistent hissing sound. Because of the flame gold mine, the temperature here was staggering. The water evaporated almost instantly upon entry, filling the air with steam. However, under careful control, a small amount of water still managed to draw near. Finally, with a crisp notification, it successfully made contact with the fire element gold. The source was detected, and the fire virtual godhead was ready for activation. At that moment, as the wonderful sound rang out, its spirit was ignited like a wildfire. A triple-element godhood was within reach. It had never expected to reach the level of a triple-element deity so quickly. Deep down, it screamed for the activation to begin. Though it couldn't speak, that exhilarating cry echoed through its consciousness. And in that very instant, the transformation took hold. The fire virtual godhead finally took shape. With the fire attribute added to its body, it had truly become a boiling river of flame. Of course, this was merely the surface. It only proved that fire elements had entered the river. Such is the terrifying nature of the river of elements. It is all-encompassing, capable of holding every element in existence. Meanwhile, the moment that fire virtual godhead was finally activated, just as it happened with the wood element, the main body of the river of elements began to surge. The source lake was the first to feel the change. As if the world itself were being reshaped, the lake expanded 10 times over. Next came the main body of the river itself. 20,000, 50,000, a million meters. It soared with a speed visible to the naked eye. To be honest, the process was unimaginable. It was like an act of creation. Even on the vast, boundless burning plains, the sudden appearance of a river stretching a million meters could no longer be ignored, winding through the land like a divine dragon. The transformation had altered the very geography of the region. The scale was simply too massive. At the same time, just as the million-meter river completed its evolution, somewhere else on the burning plains, the group sent by Isabel to find other exiled elves felt the tremors. We see them grow visibly excited by the sudden vibration. The old elf patriarch looked at another exiled elven bloodline before him and spoke with great emotion. "It is the god, do you see?" He told them it was the deity his tribe worshipped, performing a miracle. He promised that if they followed him, they would receive divine favor. It was certainly better than wandering aimlessly. The old patriarch tried his best to persuade them, and we must admit, he was quite persistent. This particular group of exiled elves was actually larger than his own. At their peak, they had numbered nearly 100,000. However, after losing a struggle for the position of Elven Queen, they became sacrifices and were exiled by the current ruler. Decades passed in the harsh environment of the Burning Plains, and that massive population suffered heavy casualties. Now, only about 10,000 remained. This is why the old patriarch sought them out first, hoping they would join and regain their faith. Convincing a group of this size to join him was no easy task. Even in their declined state, they were still formidable. Their numbers still far exceeded Isabel's tribe. Consequently, the old patriarch was rejected on the spot. But then, something happened. At the very moment of his rejection, it just so happened that the fire virtual godhead was activated. The River of Elements underwent its greatest evolution yet, and this world-shaking sight completely stunned the exiled elven tribe. Taking advantage of this moment, the old elf patriarch made his proposal once again. It was all a bit coincidental, really, but the final result was more than satisfying. With the blessing of a deity, everything fell perfectly into place. The old patriarch finally secured 10,000 elven believers for you. Meanwhile, the River of Elements transformation was nearing its end. However, a new problem soon emerged. This particular evolution had been so violent that the river now stretched 1,000,000 meters. Your original water volume was naturally insufficient to fill it, especially after losing so much while carving out the underground channels. Although the 1,000,000-meter river had formed, it looked like an utterly parched riverbed. It was a bit of an awkward sight. Aside from the source lake, which remained plentiful, the downstream banks were nearly dry, and so, a solution was needed. The river desperately needed a downpour to saturate its dry bed and return to its peak state. But for now, there was a distraction. The flame magic snake had not yet been subdued. Once the transformation was complete, he immediately turned his full attention toward it. Suddenly, an aura unique to a deity began to spread. At this moment, because you were essentially the god of fire yourself, the water from the underground river flowing into the fire gold mine was no longer affected by the heat of the stones. That previous state of constant evaporation instantly vanished. After all, you were now a river of fire, imbued with fire element power. Naturally, the water merged seamlessly with the fire gold mine. As the massive volume of water surged inward with a heavy gurgle, the flame magic snake, still locked in a fierce battle with the demon willow, sensed that something was very wrong at home. Using terrifying strength, he shook off the willow's main roots and charged toward the mine. However, when he reached his lair, the sight that met his eyes caused his massive body to freeze in shock. Everywhere he looked, there was water. Yet, despite being water, it had integrated perfectly with his home. Usually, water and fire are opposing forces that cannot coexist. But here they were, defying nature right before him. For a moment, the angry flame magic snake was stunned into silence. Soon, an even deeper rage began to burn within him. To him, this fusion was a blatant attempt to seize his birthplace. It was a theft of his very resources, and he could not tolerate it. Terrifying flames erupted from his massive body in response. The dragon horns atop his head released an unimaginable heat, as if he intended to evaporate every drop of river water. But then, something strange happened. To his utter surprise, the water didn't vanish. No matter how much his flame power erupted, the river simply absorbed it all without a struggle. Even when he unleashed the full extent of his calamity-level power, the result was the same. It was as if he wasn't looking at water at all, but fire. He was facing a form of liquid flame, a substance capable of containing all things within itself. The flame magic snake was overcome by an eerie, indescribable sensation. Finally, a sense of crisis took hold, warning him that if he didn't leave now, he might never be able to leave at all. With a series of thunderous rumbles, the massive creature began to retreat, sensing his impending doom. He turned his enormous body with desperate speed, trying to escape this terrifying place. But at that very moment, everything changed. An aura far surpassing his current level of existence finally erupted. Yes, we are talking about a power beyond the calamity level. This was the life force of a quasi-god level being, and the defining characteristic of such a form is, of course, the virtual divinity. By activating your fire-type virtual divinity, you became a quasi-god of fire. Once that divine aura manifested, it acted like a higher life form exerting dominance over a lower one. It was a suppression of the very bloodline, especially since they shared the same element. This suppression was undeniably clear. A fire quasi-god is naturally far more powerful than a fire calamity creature. In this moment, as the divine fire aura exploded outward, the flame magic snake was instantly shaken and frozen in place. Then, acting with the authority of a god, you transmitted your will directly to him. The Lord of Elements demands your surrender. Submit, and you shall receive eternal favor. You offered to guide him toward becoming a true god of fire. Upon receiving this divine message, the flame magic snake's massive frame began to tremble. The ground shook with the force of his realization. Being a creature of high intelligence, he understood that his own strength could never hope to shake this strange firewater. Attacking it would only make your fire elements more active. To be honest, he had no other choice. After a moment of deep reflection, the flame magic snake finally compromised and chose to surrender. And just like that, you gained his loyalty. The system notified us that since no resonance was formed, he was automatically categorized as a servant, much like the golden-winged magic eagle before him. Since there was no resonance, a servant he would remain. But a servant is fine, provided the creature gets a taste of the benefits to come. He wasn't particularly worried about betrayal, he muttered to himself. Once the flame magic snake had fully surrendered, he finally opened his attribute template. To his surprise, a notification suddenly popped up. The system informed him that because he had discovered a flame gold resource mine, the attribute template had unlocked a resource conversion function. He could now convert resources into evolution points, energy, or divine power. This resource conversion function was, to be honest, absolutely perfect. Seeing the prompt, he couldn't help but feel a surge of wild joy. After all, these resources are the treasures that drive evolution, like the flame gold stones before him, which are pure fire element crystals. They allow fire-based species to evolve rapidly, making the process much faster and more convenient than simply absorbing spiritual energy from the world. It was precisely because of this that the flame magic snake had been able to rely on this mine to achieve its third life transition. By unlocking this conversion function, he had essentially opened a high-speed lane for evolution. It was almost like using a cheat code. At this moment, looking at the flame gold mine submerged beneath the river, he excitedly began the conversion process, starting with evolution points. These points are essential for his main body's evolution, so they were naturally the priority. Suddenly, the river water began to boil. Under a shroud of illusory light, the flame gold stones scattered across the mine began to rapidly vanish. 1,000 evolution points were added, then another 1,000. It was just like farming experience points. The evolution points ticked up frantically until 2/3 of the flame gold mine had been consumed. His evolution points finally broke through the 1 million mark. After that, he stopped and decided to put the remaining resources into his energy value. Energy is vital for using skills and talents. Although his main body, the elemental river, had expanded to a length of 1,000,000 meters, the riverbed was still largely dry and needed to be filled to sustain his domain. Plus, there was his future plan for the underground river. The volume of water required was almost unimaginable. Since his domain was currently his only way to restore water, he knew he needed more power. Sufficient energy was, naturally, indispensable, and so, the remaining third of the fire-type mine was entirely converted into energy. The notifications flooded his vision as his energy value climbed higher and higher, 1 unit at a time, in a constant stream of progress. By the time the last of the flame gold was gone, his energy value had reached the 1,500 unit mark. It was a truly satisfying result. This trip had turned into a massive windfall, a fire virtual divinity, a 1,000,000-meter river, and an abundance of evolution points and energy. He also had a divine insect to deal with. Once he returned and properly digested it, his strength would surely multiply several times over. In high spirits, he sent out a mental command, ordering the golden-winged magic eagle, the flame magic snake, and the demon willow to return to headquarters. Finally, his own will return to the source of the river, the lake. But the very moment his consciousness arrived, he discovered that a massive crowd of elves had appeared by the lakeshore in this mystical green land, numbering well over 10,000. Led by Isabel, they were all kneeling before the divine totem, praying in silence. Meanwhile, through his virtual divinity, he saw clusters of incredibly pure faith energy floating above their heads, gathering together to release an ethereal, shimmering light. This caused his virtual divinity to vibrate with a sensation much like seeing a gourmet feast, an intense, overwhelming hunger. He hadn't expected Isabel's elven tribe to bring back so much faith energy. It was one pleasant surprise after another. Without hesitation, he accepted every drop of that pure power floating above the elves. Ding. Divine power plus 100. Ding. Another 100. The faith gathered from over 10,000 elves was truly formidable, especially since some among them possessed souls as pure as the old patriarch. With Isabel and her kin being such pure beings, this harvest was massive. By the time it was over, his divine power had increased by a staggering 1.1 million units. Adding in his previous reserves, his total divine power had now broken through the 1.2 million mark. At the same time, just as he finished absorbing that pure faith, the elves kneeling before the divine totem felt a sudden jolt to their spirits. In their souls, they could clearly sense the presence of their deity, the sacred connection that forms once one truly becomes a believer. But what shocked them even more was that, because he was a triple-element deity, these elves found something changing within their own bodies. They were actually awakening affinities for water and fire. It was almost unimaginable, leaving even Isabel's own tribe in complete awe. Praise the great deity. We offer our pure souls to serve you forever. Please, accept our most sincere and humble prayers. In that moment of shock, led by the elven Queen Isabel, nearly every elf prostrated themselves completely before the divine totem. They prayed and praised their god with such fervor that their souls seemed purified, becoming even clearer than before. And then, new clusters of pure faith energy began to drift upward from them once again, in quantities nearly equal to the first harvest. Watching this unfold, he felt his excitement surge once again. It was like a stone dropped into a pond, creating a second wave of devotion from these elven followers. A second harvest of faith began. By the time he finished gathering it all, his divine power had finally shattered the 2 million mark. And at the very moment his power broke through that milestone, that wonderful system notification chimed in his mind once more. This journey had been one pleasant surprise after another, activating the fire virtual divinity, expanding his river form, and subduing the flame magic snake. Then, after his evolution points and energy values skyrocketed, he returned home only to find his divine power hitting 2 million as well. It was enough to trigger an upgrade to his virtual divinity. In this moment, he truly felt like a child of destiny, favored by fate itself. He felt like the protagonist of a novel who finds treasures just by stepping out the door. Amidst this excitement, he finally pulled his focus back to reality. After a moment of reflection, he realized that although he had evolved into a river of elements capable of holding everything, his core was still unique. Upgrading the water-type virtual divinity seemed like the better fit. After a moment of quiet reflection, he made his decision. His water virtual divinity leveled up to rank 3. As that sweet sound echoed, his nearly dried-up river of elements began to change. Terrifying amounts of water elements suddenly surged forth, and his unique divine aura began to spread even further than before. Oh, and then something interesting happened. The water virtual divinity began to shift and transform right before our eyes. It began evolving water elements into various forms, but after this specific level increase, the transformation became far more absolute. Directly upon the foundation of his water divinity, a brand new divine skill was born: water manifestation, the art of turning water into all things. It allowed him to use his divine spirit to manifest any form he imagined, creating avatars with actual combat capabilities. To be honest, it was quite a leap. This skill was incredibly powerful. He wondered if this was the legendary power where spirit interferes with reality, and he couldn't help but feel a rush of adrenaline. He was just about to test this new divine skill, but after sensing the current state of his elemental river body, he immediately hesitated. The riverbed was almost completely dry. At this point, replenishing the water source was the only thing that truly mattered. And so, with a single thought, he finally activated the blessing of all things skill. In an instant, auspicious light filled the sky, and spiritual energy exploded above the million-meter river. The resulting glow looked like a million-meter rainbow hanging over a burning plain. It was, quite frankly, a spectacle of absolute grandeur. At the same time, after brewing for a brief moment, the long-awaited rain finally began to fall. The downpour brought life to all things as it washed over the land. Right then, the sunny willows standing by the lakeside released a dense aura of wood elements, its vibrant greenery flourishing instantly. Countless willow branches transformed into a green mist that merged with the rain, filling the green leaf immortal sect with an even more ethereal atmosphere. Because his elemental river body had grown to such a massive scale, stretching across 1,000,000 meters like a winding divine dragon, the harsh conditions of the surrounding burning plains began to improve rapidly. It was as if the world itself was being reshaped wherever the river flowed. Vitality bloomed everywhere, and the once hostile environment was simply wiped away. As for his riverbed, which had dried up due to his sudden growth, it gradually regained its strength under the nourishment of the falling rain. And then, the very moment the first drops touched the ground, the expressions on the faces of his elven followers became even more devout. To them, this was a miracle, a true, undeniable miracle. The rain caused the concentration of spiritual energy in the surrounding area to surge, increasing by at least tenfold. In this moment, they couldn't believe they were witnessing such a wonder. They began to offer praise to their great and powerful deity. Praising the Lord of Elements, the elves prostrated themselves on the ground, chanting prayers with deep sincerity. It was quite a sight to behold. Their faith had granted them affinity with water, fire, and wood, and this rain acted like a divine empowerment from above. It caused the spiritual energy within their bodies to skyrocket. In just a short time, one elf after another began to break through their original realms. First one, then two, then three. As time passed, more and more elves achieved their breakthroughs under the cooling rain.